I can like easily start things off. So basically, just like give a little kind of like descriptor about what it is that you're known for in the Dragon world.
I am known. Well, okay. So here's how I got into Dragon Ball Z, and it'll also tell you what characters I'm known for. I went into a rehearsal. I had a theater company. We were doing an improv show. A guy named Brad Jackson. He's the voice of Oolong. He came in and he was like, "Hey man, you should go audition for this Dragon Balls thing." And I was like, "Dragon Balls? That sounds like porn." And he was like, "No, it's Japanese anime." And I was like, "Okay, so it's definitely porn." He was like, "No, go call this guy. His name's Chris Sabat." And so I called this guy, and he was like, "Hey man, yeah, you want to come audition?" And I was like, "Sure." And then he was like, "Yeah, we're in the bank building in Northridge. Just roof snow exit. You'll find it, man." And then I went in to audition. He was like, "You think you can do this guy?" And it was Garlic Jr. And I was like, "I'm gonna push you into the dead zone." And he was like, "Oh man, that's great. That was awesome. Can you record it right now? I mean, like, do you mind if we just record it?" And I'm like, "I got the part." And he was like, yeah, you got the part, man. Let's go ahead and record it." And I was like, "Okay." I guess they were behind schedule, maybe. Because I'd never auditioned for a part and then immediately got it and recorded it. So Garlic Jr. and Mustard, one of his henchmen, those were the two first ones I did. Then after that, I did Android 17, and I was Kibito, I was Master Shen, Mr. Shu, Android 13, Super Android 17. I think that's most of it.
Yeah, but apparently that wasn't your first ever anime role. Was there Crayon's Shin-chan as well a couple of years before?
No. Shin-chan was technically produced in Japan before Dragon Ball.
Right.
Our dubbing of it, the first thing we actually dubbed, we dubbed DBZ first, and then we went back and dubbed Dragon Ball.
Right.
Because Emperor Pilaf came in sort of way down the line.
Okay, that's definitely fair enough. But I suppose it's just in the way that Dragon Ball GT kind of like had that, because the Dragon Ball dub was around 2000, right?
Sure.
Something around like that, but yeah.
I don't know, I can't, time is weird for me.
Yeah, no, time is pretty weird. But so, in terms of like, so I'll start the ball rolling, but again, we'll head like to some questions shortly. So if you have a question for, Chuck right here, the Huber Mensch, feel free to get them ready, and we'll be ready. You can just shout them out, and we'll get that answer for you. But we'll just start things off really. But I took some time talking about that. So basically just about yourself. So I looked and you kind of like you've done a couple of books. One called Dreams of an Invisible Girl.
Yes, that's true.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So that is my wife's artwork, and Dreams of the Invisible Girl is story starters based on her artwork. She has really fantastical artwork. And so I said, "Hey, Jessica, my lovely wife, we should do a book together." And she's like, "Oh, a publisher just asked me about doing a book. What do you have in mind?" And so like I wrote like a one line to start off the story based on the picture. So it's sort of an educational book.
Oh, that's cool.
And we got a contract for another one, Snow White and Rose Red, which I wrote in anapestic tetrameter, which is the sort of Dr. Seuss rhythm. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch who lived just north of Whoville did not. So it sounds like that.
Oh wow, that's really cool. That's just really interesting, and you can like take that avenue. So
yeah,
that's a kind of different, nice little side project you got there.
I like writing. Writing is probably where I'm headed.
Okay.
More and more as I discover what I really truly enjoy. I like coming to conventions, and I like sitting at home looking at words, trying to make them perfect.
Yeah. Do you so let's touch upon that actually. Yeah, your passion for writing. So, because I was going to ask about what you do in your spare time, but you pretty much answered that already. So, what kind of got you into writing? Is it something relatively recent, or is it something you've always had?
We were required to write things in high school and college, and I was always pretty adept at it. And then, I started by writing short stories and then screenplays. I have a movie called Arbor Day the Musical that I wrote, which is a hilarious musical comedy about September 11th, 2001. Nothing funnier than that day. Firefighter Jesus, favorite song in the whole movie. Firefighter Jesus, break through the flames and rescue me. So it's a little irreverent. It may make people upset. Sometimes, it's best seen with a large group while drinking, just generally speaking.
Ooh. Okay. So, is there kind of like any kind of like story that what would be like your magnum opus? Is there like a story? Because they always say there's a novel inside of someone, like a big novella, as it were. Is there something that you really want to do?
I've got writing projects in queue right now. I've got one called Dark Plains, which is a film I wrote with another filmmaker, John Keynes. And I had a sort of an insight into a different ending. It's sort of a psychological thriller. It's basically Little House on the Prairie meets Rosemary's Baby. So it's like Ma and Pa build their cabin, Pa goes away, and Ma has a baby, and the baby's possessed by the devil. So that's next in queue, and then I got the Jesus H. Christ Demon Slayer that I'm writing, which is, and it's funny because people think that it's like I'm targeting it towards my Christian brothers and sisters. I really think like if I can get hipsters and conservative Christians to love a movie called Jesus H. Christ Demon Slayer, that would be the absolute win for me.
So kind of like you're bridging barriers.
Yes.
Through irreverent storytelling.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's exactly what I do. That is exactly what I do.
Okay, that's not.
The whole Arbor Day the musical, people think but it's really about people struggling with their different views of things and using comedy and irony and pathos to help everybody go, oh, it's not that big a deal that we don't think the same thing.
Oh, that's a good style actually, because it kind of just makes you just stop. You think you're going to be annoyed by something, but wait a minute. Then you actually listen to it. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, because it's exactly like the Book of Mormon, because the Book of Mormon is very much like that.
Yes.
As in, you think it's going to be like, oh,
Mormons love that show.
Yeah, no, that's just the thing. You think it's going to be all about making fun of them, but it's actually really well researched.
Yeah.
It's well thought out.
That's exactly what I'm doing. I mean, Jesus H. Christ Demon Slayer, I'm sort of basing the scenes on the Stations of the Cross and the mysteries of the Rosary. So, like, we're going through the life of Christ. It's just that he has sort of a Hulk-like persona that's a really strong dwarf-like dude who carries a hammer to kill demons.
Oh, that's great.
And the last line of the movie is going to be great. He saves the dwarf-like hammer dude, and he looks at him and says, "Let's go to hell." And so then they go to hell. So, sequel.
Oh, so sequel baiting, but in probably one of the more epic lines.
Yeah, "Let's go to hell" is the last line of the movie. That's pretty awesome. And they're actually
literally doing it.
Physically then jumping into the pit of hell.
Yeah, no, there's nothing more like about a character saying, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and they actually do it. Like the last time I remember was like Nicolas Cage in Drive Angry, saying, I'm going to take you out and do all that kind of stuff, and then by the end of the movie you think, is he going to do it? Oh, there he goes and does it. Alright, okay. Drive Angry, weird movie, but...
That is a weird movie.
It's fun if you're drunk.
True.
But yeah, so let's bring the topic back to Dragon Ball.
Sure.
So for those of you, it's just like, because that's really cool, but people would like to hear about the MVP, because quite clearly
that's me.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot to say about Android 17, because again, you knew that you were getting something in Dragon Ball Super because you had all the stuff with, itty bitty little Pilaf.
Oh yeah, I know for sure. I knew that something was going to happen.
So you at least got something with that. So let's just say, but again, for the people that weren't here over the last couple of days, what was the moment that you realized that, I'm going to get some more work? Like the moment you saw that Android 17, that he was back. Yeah,
there was. I woke up one morning and he had been. It was. After the Japanese sub had aired, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but he has a little sacrifice play that was really well received by the fandom, and then it was, he was trending on Twitter worldwide, and I was like, that's me, that's my character, trending on Twitter worldwide. I think this has gotten even bigger.
All right, yeah, and I mentioned that I remember you mentioning that as the episodes go out and 17's doing stuff, do you follow along when it airs on TV? Do you like, or do you like kind of like chat with people on Twitter and stuff like that?
Yeah, no, the fans, you guys tell me everything that's happening. I learn more from you guys than I do from any of my own research. I have 7 children and 5 different professions that I work in, so for me to like sit down and watch all the anime I do would be, I'd probably have to get rid of some kids or a wife or something. You know, like trade them for more anime time.
Yeah, that's all, again, you're talking to the right people. We all want more time for anime, but
It's true.
yeah, no, that's really cool. That's a really good way. I've really noticed that whenever a new episode comes out, it's always good for that audience to come and just say to you, "Oh, dude, you were really great in this," and you go like, "Oh yeah, I recorded that." But
That was me.
yeah, no, that's really really interesting. So, just in the sense of like throughout this recent stint of 17,
Right.
would you say you understand the character more today than you did when you were like you just really got into the stride of it in the original early 2000s?
Well, in the early 2000s, what's interesting is that I'd worked in social services and foster care and worked with special needs communities, and autism was sort of becoming more well integrated into society, but not until after sort of the early 2000s. That's when it started to become more mainstream. But during this run of Super, as I was watching it, I was and reading about it, I was like, Android 17 is he's on the spectrum. Like he is definitely he's autistic. And when I was reading lines, I was reading them the way my son, who's autistic, like some of the matter-of-fact way he states things. Yes, I killed them, or whatever. It's not ruthless so much as it is, I just state the facts. I'm going to tell you what's really happening. I don't have any artifice or really ability to lie. I just tell you the truth. And he, blended real well. And a lot of the reads I did were reads that I would just imagine how my son would say something, and then it would come out as Android 17.
Okay. Now, there was one thing that we learned in Super with Android 17 is that it's been common law in the guidebooks in Japan for the last 20 years or so, but it was really brought to light in the anime that 17 is very much, he's a dad of like 3, as in they have a kid, they adopted 2.
Right.
So, when you read that, did you like see a reflection of yourself? Just like, the family, and like you protect them, and all that kind of like stuff. You have that kind of mishmash of different personalities and like that kind of dynamic. Is it interesting?
Yeah, for sure. It definitely felt like a reflection of my life, or I was able to put my life into the character a little more. I would be really fascinated to see who this family is.
Yeah, because the only person that knows has seen a picture is Goku.
Right.
And 18 may know, but nobody else does. For all we know, they don't exist. Or because
Android 17's crazy. He's got little potatoes with faces on them. These are my children.
Yeah, because it's like
I love them. This one's adopted, and this one's adopted, and then there's like a piece of leather. This is my real child. Suddenly, Android 17 then he's just insane.
Well, to be honest, at that point he is like, I love nature. It was just really interesting that they actually remember that tidbit, and the reason why he's on the island is that he's there to work and help pay for it, and it's also he loves animals and stuff like that.
Yeah, I joked for years, for a decade and a half, that Android 17 would come back as a tree-hugging hippie, and then he did, and I was like, I did that with my mind! I made that happen.
Yeah, no, because it was like in the History of Trunks movie, they were just like talking about, after all this is done, I'm going to become a park ranger.
Right.
Yeah, no, and it just came true. That was bizarre.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we got about maybe at least another 15 minutes or so. So does anybody have any questions they'd like to bring up to Chuck? Either just shout loudly or come up to the mic whenever you feel like it. So I think you came up first, and I'll do you next.
All right, speak up, sir.
Do I sign them? I have a print on my table. Yeah. Yeah, I've got a Shao Tucker Nina. It's Shao holding Nina's hand, and Nina's holding a stuffed dog. So it's just sort of symbolic. It's indicative. Yeah, Shao Tucker's a fun character because people will actually come up to the table and yell at me. They'll be like, "You're a horrible human," and I'm like, "What'd I do?" "You were Shao Tucker." "Oh, that was just a job. I'm just an actor." "I hope you die." "You're a really angry 7-year-old girl."
Actually, that's something I'm intrigued about. So when you recorded that originally, like not for Brotherhood or something like that, because you would have known about it, but in the original one, when you come in to read for that episode, did you do your research, or when you just find out what the real twist behind it? What was your reaction?
No, we find out in the booth. My reaction in the booth was, "That's awesome, so cool." And then I watched the series and I was like, "I am a horrible human being."
You see the full context of it. And because you see just your bits.
You see just your part, and you're like, "My character is awesome. He did this awesome thing to his dog daughter." And then you see it in context, and you're like, "Oh, that's really heartbreaking."
Oh no.
It's nice to know that I was a part. So many people have said the first time I openly wept as a human, when I wasn't a child who scraped his knee. The first time, as a teenager, I openly wept, or as a 20-year-old, was when Nina was turned into the Nina monster. And so it's nice that I opened the hearts and souls of so many people with anguish and pain.
Through the art of chimeras.
Yes.
That's nuts, but...
It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's so horrible.
Yeah, the thing was, though, I hadn't seen that originally, but I saw it in the Full Alchemist, the live-action movie. That's even, more disturbing. Have you had a chance to see the live-action movie on Netflix?
No, they asked me to dub Shao in the live-action movie.
Really?
And I couldn't do that because they were like, "We can't pay you anything, and you have to come out to California tomorrow."
Oh.
Or in 3 days. And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I can't spend $1,000 to be in the live-action."
As much as it sounds cool, no, I can understand that.
I told them, I said, "If it's not that many lines, why don't you let me record them here?
Yeah.
And I'll send them to you." And they were like, "No."
Technology as it is today, it's
I know.
totally possible.
Sure. Set our levels the same. It should be good.
Yeah, exactly.
Throw some music underneath. You're fine.
Yeah. No, it should be good. You had a question. No worries, no matter. So, all right.
Your voice as Android 17 is very similar to your own voice. Is there any particular reason as to why that thing was made?
When I came in for the audition for Android 17, I had all these ideas. I'm Android 17. Sab was like, "No, man, no, just relax. Just chill out a whole bunch." "I'm Android 7. "No, man, just try not to put any effort into it. Nothing." I'm like, "I'm Android 17. And he's like, "No, seriously, just don't do anything." And I was like, "I'm Android 17. And he's like, "That's perfect." And I was like, "Oh, okay, this is going to be really easy." So then every time I went in to record, the only note I would ever get was that I was doing too much. So I would literally have to not have any acting going on inside my body, which was a challenge for me because the actors like to act. So it was just like, "I am dead inside, and we'll go do that." Great. I am pleased. I was like, this is so easy. And then any time you would fight, everybody else would be going, Android 17 was just totally silent. It was just arms flying, but no sound coming out of them. So it's the easiest character. It's the easiest voice I've ever had, bar none.
Okay. Good. All right, shoot.
Since you've never really get to see 17 family, have you got a mental image of how it looked like?
The only mental image that comes up for me is the image they used in the imagery they used in the show, which was the owl with the little owlings. They had the birds, to sort of symbolize his family at the cut right before he was talking about him. So every time I think of Android 17's family, I can only see owls.
Living on the island for too long.
That's right. So when they open it up and they actually show his family, it'll be like, this is my daughter.
Well, it's a much better image than potatoes.
That's true, the potatoes.
That's a potato.
I like potatoes.
Yeah. But, all right, shoot.
Who's your favourite Dragon Ball character
character voice altogether, and who's your favourite voice you've done altogether?
Emperor Pilaf is really a lot of fun to do. Android 17, obviously, he's the coolest. He's the most awesome. So he's got to be at the top. But Emperor Pilaf is a lot of fun. He's I don't know. You know, I get to try to make Raleigh laugh with whatever weird number. You know, you try to make funny noises come out of your face. And if I can make Raleigh laugh, or if we laugh, then we know it's a good take. But probably my favorite character ever is Hiei from Yu Yu Hakusho, because I didn't know I was famous. Famous, I'll use finger quotes there. But like, I didn't know the shows were popular because I wasn't paying attention to it. I was busy running a theater company and starting a family, and I had, you know, one baby was 2, another baby had just been born, so it was like, you're just really, really busy. So I didn't know it had become a thing. And they were like, hey Chuck, do you want to go to a con? And I was like, sure, what's a con? They're like, it's a convention where people cosplay. And I'm like, what's cosplay? I didn't know what cosplay was. They had to explain it to me. And so Funimation flew me to a convention. I was like, free plane ticket? That's awesome. And then I literally thought I was going to be doing convention work, because as an actor I'd done convention work before, which is where you know, sometimes you have a specific uniform or you're passing out flyers. So I literally thought I was going to be passing out like Yu Yu Hakusho flyers. Watch my show. Yu Yu Hakusho, it's a great show. Watch, I play Hiei. And they're like, no, Chuck, you're going to do autographs. And I was like, oh, that's so stupid. No, you're going to make me sit at a table and pretend people want my autograph, or you're going to try to get them to come on. I'm like, that's not going to work. You're not going to promote the show that way. And they were like, you don't really understand what's happening. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Because I was, and still to some degree today, I always think I'm right. But it's a problem my wife is helping fix. But then I got to the table, and there was a line. There was like a room like half this size, and there was a line around the whole room. And they were like, that's your line. They're all waiting for you. And I was just confused. And I was like, what? And they were like, okay, release the hounds. And everyone came up to the table. And I was sitting there, and they put some markers down next to me. And I'd never signed an autograph in my life. And like the first person to come up to the table was like, and I was like, ah! And, you know, she was crying, and she had a story about her dad. And she was so moved by me and my voice and Hiei, and I was like, I really didn't know what was happening. So I just got up and hugged her, and she told me about her dad, and then she had something for me to sign, and I signed it for her. And then I did that for the next 4 hours, and it took me another half hour to just even get my head back to normal, because all of a sudden there were all these people who were like screaming to see me, and I'd do the voice and they'd all yell, and I was like, I really don't know how this happened. And so the first fans I met were a lot of Hiei fans, so that he kind of remained special for that reason.
Okay, so just kind of going off that one, so you obviously have met like thousands and thousands of fans of your career. So
yep.
Apart from that first story, which is really, really touching, by the way, I have similar stories to that myself. But what is another story that spoke to you, that enough to like kind of like as soon as you heard it, you just go, oh, like you really kind of like felt like the gravitas of your career?
Yeah, I usually have a list because people will email me, or my agent will email me, and there's, you know, somebody wants, you know, a recording or show up and help propose, or someone's in the hospital, or someone needs something, like fans who want stuff, and so I always have a little list that I tick through during the month. And someone had said, would you call my friend, she's in the hospital, she's going to be there for a while, she's a big Hiei fan. And so I put down the friend's name, number, and hospital, but I didn't have any information. And then like a week had passed, and I finally got around to it. So I called her, and I was like, this is Hiei, you know, I was all like goofy and ridiculous on the phone, doing a bunch of different voices. And she was sort of soft-spoken. And then I was like, well, what are you in the hospital for? And she's like, well, I guess you've probably seen the news. And I was like, no. She's like, well, I was in a mass shooting in Northern California. I was stabbed 4 times and shot twice. I watched my sister die in front of me holding her baby. There were 11 people killed. And I was like, and I had just been so ridiculous for about 10 or 15 minutes straight. And then she was, so I was like, I can either apologize or I can double down on being ridiculous. And I went, you were stabbed how many times? And shot how many times? You're Wolverine! And she busts out laughing, and I'm laughing. And so I just like kept going with it. But then her aunt got on the phone and said, thank you. That's the first time she smiled since it happened. And then it was maybe 2 years later, I was at SaiyaCon in Seattle, and this woman in a wheelchair rolls up to me. And she's like, hey. And I'm like, hey. She's like, I was the girl you called in the hospital. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I got up, and she could walk. And so she stood up and gave me a hug, but she was still struggling with the physical therapy. She showed me her scars, and she had this painting of Hiei for me that she had done. And it was amazing, but it is the sexiest Hiei, shirtless Hiei you've ever seen. So it hangs in my studio. So, and whenever people are like, yeah, man, I like the studio. What? Yeah. What's going on? What's going on here? I'm like, here? My Hiei picture? But yeah, so that was one. But there's lots of stories, not quite as epic as that.
Yeah.
But there's almost every convention someone has something.
Yeah, no, it definitely brings a sense of perspective in that regard. It kind of just reminds you why you start and the impact that you have on those people, including people here who've come to see you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in all honesty, the impact is created by the writers and artists. But writers and artists don't necessarily like to be in front of people anyway. So the voice actors, we contribute our little bit, and but the job we have is to be the sort of three-dimensional representation of the characters that everybody loves so much. So we get to be their ambassadors in the real, IRL. I used the good internet short term thing.
No, I see what you did there.
Yeah, IRL.
You nailed it. You nailed it, dude.
I did.
So, all
That
right.
was totally yeet. I don't know. So.
No, that's more current. Nice. All right, I think we've got time for a couple more questions. So, does anybody else I have a question for Chuck or anything like that? Is there something that come up on your... Yeah? I will do you two. So, you first? Yeah.
No, go ahead.
All right, good.
I got it. Right. I think he'll probably, the question is about his real name and his sister's real name, Lapis Lazuli. If they ever do, and they should, if you're listening, do a spin-off series that's just focused on Android 17 and animals. Make it for little kids, but also make it awesome.
Yes.
More in the Transformers, different poachers every week. Okay, Toriyama?
Yeah.
Good job. Toei, you listening? But yeah, I think if they did some sort of spin-off, they'd go more in-depth. I think in the DBZ universe, he's still going to be Android 17, for sure.
Yes. Unfortunately, it's just like that whole revelation of Lapis and Lazuli. Yeah, it's name puns and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something that was like, oh, Toriyama was like, oh yeah, the name Lapis and Lazuli, and people are like, wait, what? They actually have names?
It just happened.
Yeah, and it's like, it's just of a gemstone. It's like, or just like some kind of special material. It's like, that's new. I like that. And there should be some little nod or something like that, or somebody out in West City or something like that recognizes them. I'll say, aren't you that boy Lapis or something like that? And they go, what? Or something like that, or they remember, or just set something up, and then it starts a little mini arc of discovery for them both, or something like that.
That would be fun. That'd be really fun.
That'd be a little nuts. So I think, okay, we'll have one more question. So I think it was you. So if you can either speak up or come to the microphone if you want.
Or I can come down there. I mean, either way.
Oh, well, we're halfway.
Slow-mo.
Mine's a really weird question.
Cool.
But I'm curious. So I did biology, and they say that if you're around kids, like you said, you had 2 babies.
7, but yeah.
7? Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's more.
I know. I don't know how it keeps happening. When a man and woman love each other very much, there's a special hug. And then they have sex.
So when the father is around a small child, they say that your voice, that there's a physiological change and that your voice gets higher pitched. Did you find that happening when you go to recording sessions after you just...
That's an interesting question. No, I never noticed it. My voice is always kind of got a high nasally timbre to it. It sort of cuts through. It's very, very specific. But the thing that children will do to you is they'll ruin your voice because they'll keep you up all night. There have been many times where I've stayed up all night with a colicky baby and then had to do a session at 10 a.m. the next day, and I was like, yeah, I'm ready. They're like, Chuck, where's your voice? And I'm like, well, I had 2 choices last night. Stay up all night and take care of a baby or throw a baby through a window. And so, that's how you become a better person as a parent, is the fear of being embarrassed for murdering your own child. It's totally true.
Oh, well, that's definitely a note to thing. Throwing babies out of windows.
Don't do it.
No, don't do it.
You don't want to get on the nightly news.
You just don't do it.
That's right. That's how you become better. You're like,
You become better. Keep that baby in your arms.
now I am more patient.
Yeah, achievement unlocked.
That's exactly what it is.
All right, so I think we're pretty much done for time. So thank you, Chuck, for joining us.
Thank you guys. You guys are awesome.
Thank you
being
for
fans.
listening. All right, so coming up relatively shortly is the Dragon Ball YouTuber panel.